3 years. 3 full seasons of sun and rain and careful attention, and my lemon tree had never once flowered. It stood in the corner of the yard looking suspiciously healthy, glossy leaves, sturdy branches, not a single yellowing spot. Visitors admired it. Neighbors asked for cuttings. Year after year, it gave me nothing but leaves. I watered it on schedule. I fed it citrus fertilizer. I pruned it every winter the way every guide recommended. I moved it for more sunlight, added compost, even sprayed for pests that weren't there. Nothing changed. Then, on an ordinary afternoon, an old man tending a citrus grove nearby glanced at my tree, then at the kitchen scraps in my hand headed for the trash, and said something that stopped me cold. "You're throwing away the one thing that could fix that tree." He wouldn't explain further. He just smiled and walked off. What followed was months of research and a transformation I still find hard to believe. By the end, you'll understand why healthy-looking lemon trees refuse to fruit, the mistake nearly every gardener makes, and the science hiding in something you throw in the bin every day. For most of those 3 years, I assumed the problem was something I wasn't doing. That's the trap almost every frustrated citrus grower falls into. We see a lemon tree with strong growth and deep green leaves, and we assume health above the soil means health below it. But a fruitless lemon tree isn't usually starving. It's often overfed in exactly the wrong way. My tree was getting nitrogen-heavy fertilizer every few weeks, the kind marketed for lush, fast growth. And lush, fast growth is exactly what I got. Long branches. Big leaves. A tree that looked like a magazine photo. What I didn't realize is that a plant pouring all its energy into leafy growth has very little left over for flowering. It's a strange irony of gardening. Sometimes the more comfortable and well-fed a plant appears, the less motivated it is to reproduce. Citrus trees, like many fruiting plants, need a kind of gentle stress signal, a shift in conditions that tells them it's time to invest in blossoms instead of branches. I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that conventional fertilizer, more water, and more attention weren't working, and I was starting to believe some trees simply refuse to fruit no matter what you do. The old gardener's comment kept nagging at me, so I finally asked him directly what he meant. He asked if I ever threw away eggshells. I said, of course. Who keeps eggshells? He shook his head like I'd confirmed something he already suspected. Eggshells, he explained, are almost pure calcium carbonate, with trace amounts of phosphorus, magnesium, and other minerals citrus trees quietly crave but rarely receive from typical fertilizers. But it wasn't just about tossing shells into the dirt. It was about how they were prepared, when they were applied, and what was happening underground that made them effective. He told me the real transformation wasn't going to happen on the branches first. It would happen in the soil, invisible, weeks before I saw a single flower. That single sentence changed how I thought about the entire problem. I had been treating the tree like the patient. In reality, the soil was the patient, and the tree was simply reporting on its condition. Calcium plays a role in plants that's easy to overlook because it doesn't show up in the same dramatic way nitrogen does. Nitrogen fuels visible growth, stems, leaves, size. Calcium works quietly, structuring cell walls and supporting the formation of new tissue, including the delicate cells that eventually become flower buds. Without enough available calcium, a citrus tree can grow abundant foliage while essentially failing to build the cellular architecture needed for blossoms. But here's the part most people miss. Calcium from crushed eggshells doesn't just feed the plant directly. It changes the environment around the roots. As the shells slowly break down, they buffer soil pH, creating conditions that beneficial soil microbes prefer. And those microbes are the real engine behind flowering. Healthy soil is not simply dirt with nutrients in it. It's a living ecosystem, fungi, bacteria, and microorganisms working in partnership with roots, breaking down organic matter, unlocking nutrients that would otherwise stay chemically locked away and unusable. Store-bought fertilizer floods the soil with a burst of immediately available nutrients, which can actually suppress this microbial activity over time, the way handing someone all their meals for a week might make them stop bothering to cook. Slow-release organic matter, like properly prepared eggshells combined with a few other kitchen scraps, does the opposite. It feeds the microbes first, and the microbes feed the tree. This process, called nutrient cycling, is what allows trace minerals like magnesium and potassium to become available in forms citrus roots can actually absorb. Potassium in particular is closely tied to flower initiation and fruit development, but only when the surrounding soil biology is functioning well enough to deliver it. There was a second ingredient the old gardener mentioned almost as an afterthought. Used coffee grounds, dried first, never applied wet or in large clumps. On their own, coffee grounds are mildly acidic and rich in nitrogen, which sounds like it would work against the calcium's buffering effect. But in small, carefully timed amounts, they do something different. They add organic bulk that improves soil structure, helping it hold moisture without becoming waterlogged, while also feeding a different population of beneficial fungi that break down woody root debris. The combination, applied correctly, creates a kind of underground negotiation between acidity and alkalinity, structure and drainage, feeding and restraint. Get the ratio wrong, and you either burn tender roots or do nothing at all. Get it right, and the soil itself begins to change texture within weeks, becoming darker, looser, and noticeably better at retaining moisture between waterings. Here's where most people who try this fail without ever realizing why. They hear eggshells and coffee grounds, and assume more must be better, so they dump a season's worth of scraps around the base of the tree all at once. Instead of a slow, steady mineral release feeding a growing microbial population, they create a compacted layer that traps moisture against the trunk, invites fungal rot, and does almost nothing for the roots further out where the tree actually absorbs nutrients. The old gardener was emphatic about this point. Small amounts, spread wide, applied consistently over months, will always outperform a single generous dump. It's the same reason a person who eats one enormous meal a week doesn't function nearly as well as someone eating modest meals daily. Soil biology runs on consistency, not abundance. Understanding this single distinction, slow and steady beats large and occasional, was the real turning point, more important in some ways than the ingredients themselves. The method itself, once I understood the reasoning behind it, was almost embarrassingly simple. Eggshells were rinsed, dried completely for several days, then crushed into a fine powder rather than left in chunks, since chunks can take years to break down and provide almost no immediate benefit. Coffee grounds were dried the same way, never applied fresh and damp, since that invites mold rather than beneficial fungi. The two were mixed in a roughly 3-to-1 ratio of eggshell powder to coffee grounds, then worked gently into the top few inches of soil around the tree's drip line, avoiding direct contact with the trunk. This was done once every 4 to 6 weeks, always followed by a deep, slow watering to help the material begin integrating with the soil rather than sitting on the surface. Late winter into early spring, just before the tree's natural growth cycle accelerated, turned out to be the ideal window to begin, giving the soil time to shift before the tree needed to decide where to send its energy. The waiting was the hardest part. Nothing happens in soil biology overnight, and anyone expecting instant results will be disappointed and likely quit too early. For the first 2 to 3 weeks, nothing visible changed at all. Around week 4, the leaves took on a slightly deeper, more saturated green, subtle enough that I second-guessed whether I was imagining it. By week 6, new growth at the branch tips looked different from previous growth, shorter internodes, slightly thicker stems, the kind of compact growth associated with a plant shifting its priorities. That was the first real sign something beneath the surface had changed. Then, in week 9, I noticed the first flower buds. Small, white-tinged, clustered near the tips of several branches at once, not scattered randomly the way occasional stress blooms sometimes appear. Within days, the fragrance was noticeable from several feet away, sweet and slightly citrus-sharp, drawing in bees and hoverflies that had rarely bothered visiting before. 3 years of nothing, and suddenly the tree was covered in blossoms it seemed almost eager to produce. Not every flower became fruit. That's normal, and expecting 100% fruit set from 100% bloom is exactly the kind of unrealistic expectation that leads people to distrust methods that are actually working. But enough held on. Small green lemons began forming within a month of the first blossoms opening, growing slowly but steadily, supported by roots now working in partnership with a soil ecosystem that had quietly rebuilt itself underground. The tree today looks different in ways that go beyond fruit. The branches are noticeably sturdier, better able to support the weight of developing lemons without bending under strain. The leaves have a richer, more consistent color across the entire canopy rather than the uneven patches I used to have. The soil beneath it holds moisture longer between waterings, requiring less frequent attention even during warmer months. Pollinators visit regularly now, drawn by blossoms that keep appearing in smaller waves throughout the growing season rather than a single burst. Even the way the tree responds to stress has changed. During a brief dry spell that would once have caused visible leaf curl within days, the tree barely reacted, its roots apparently drawing on soil that now holds water more evenly instead of drying out in patches. Neighbors who watched this unfold from the beginning have started asking the same question the old gardener once refused to fully answer for me, and I've found myself giving the same patient response. It isn't one trick, it's an ecosystem finally allowed to do its job. None of this happened because I forced the tree to do anything. It happened because the conditions underground finally matched what the tree needed to succeed on its own terms. That, in the end, is the lesson worth remembering long after the lemons are picked. The best gardeners rarely succeed by pushing a plant harder, feeding it more, or intervening more aggressively when something isn't working. They succeed by paying attention to what's invisible: the soil, the microbes, the slow chemistry happening beneath every leaf and branch, and then quietly creating the conditions that allow nature to do what it already knows how to do. My lemon tree didn't need 3 more years of frustration. It needed calcium it wasn't getting, structure it was missing, and a population of microbes that had been starved by convenience rather than encouraged by patience. The fix wasn't hidden in some rare product or expensive treatment. It was sitting in a kitchen bin the entire time, waiting to be understood rather than thrown away. Somewhere between the first flower and the first ripe lemon, I stopped thinking of the tree as stubborn and started thinking of it as honest. It had been telling the truth about its soil the entire time. I simply hadn't learned to listen. Every fruitless season was information, not failure. The old gardener never gave me a miracle. He gave me a question worth asking, and the tree, once the ground beneath it changed, answered the only way it speaks: blossoms, fruit, patient growth.